Hello, I'm Darren Taggart. I just thought I'd chip in with a bit of background to the Big Bang Theory into what's a very interesting conversation. And the Big Bang Theory itself can be summarised quite simply as in the very distant past the universe was a lot smaller, it was dense and it was hot. Since then it has expanded and has become less dense and cooler. The theory itself is the product of special relativity, which then led on to general relativity, which said that space-time is curved. Now, may as well just explain it. Special relativity basically says you can't tell the difference if you're moving at a constant velocity in a uniform speed in a single direction or standing still. There's no experiment you can do that'll prove that for you. General relativity took into account gravity. So general relativity says that you can't tell whether the difference between being sat on a planet, let's say Earth, or accelerating in deep space at 9.81 meters per second. There's no experiment you can do that'll tell the difference between one and the other. So imagine if you are in a spaceship and you're accelerating at 9.81 meters per second, meters per second, you're flying along and a beam of light comes through the window. By the time it comes through the window, by the time it hits the other side of the ship, because you've accelerated up, the light's now hitting a point that's lower than the hole it came in through, so it appears to be curved. Now, because general relativity says there's no experiment you can do that can differentiate between gravity and acceleration, you should see that on a planet, for example, i.e. Light should be bent by the presence of a gravitational body, and that's in fact what does happen. It's very well documented and proved. It's been observed many a time, first by an English physicist whose name escapes me, Arthur Eddington. Google that, which gave the first evidence that light is indeed bent by gravitation, which of course Newton's law did not predict that, and that's how we know that Newton's gravitational law was wrong. So the main output of general relativity is that space-time is curved. It makes predictions about black holes which have been observed. Some of the other outputs of those equations, some of the other results of those equations say that the universe is space-time is either shrinking or it's growing. There isn't a static solution to the general relativity field equations. So, and those field equations have all been proven in other ways, as I say, through black holes being observed, the speed, your GPS, for example, in your car works by satellites that have all been adjusted for the effects of general relativity. So, you know, if you think that the parts of general relativity that say that space-time is curved are wrong, then don't trust your GPS because they shouldn't work. As I say, it's either expanding or it's contracting. That's what the equations say. Then Edwin Hubble famously found out which one it was, and it was that they were expanding. He pointed his telescope at the sky, in a part of the sky where there were no stars, and what he saw was galaxies, and they were all redshifted, which he took to mean in every direction. So all of the galaxies were moving apart from each other. What does it mean when you run back in, when you reverse that expansion, what have you got? You've got a contraction. So what you can say is, well, if everything's moving away from each other now, if we go back in time, everything's moving closer together. And if you run that on, you get to a point where everything's in a small, is more dense and more hot. Now, it's wrong to say that it's necessarily smaller. There's one solution of the field equations that gives space as finite, and two that gives space as infinite. So if it's finite, you're basically on a sphere of space-time. If it's infinite, you're on either a saddle sort of shape or a flat shape. So if it's infinite, one of the interesting points, if you're into interesting points, is that it was always infinite. So at the start of the universe, if you want to call it the start, the universe was still infinite. It was just denser and hotter. So it isn't the idea that it's this point of light existing 14 billion years ago isn't entirely correct. It isn't the case. If the universe is infinite, then it was infinite at its start as well. You can't change something from finite to infinite. Another point about the Big Bang Theory and the expansion of the universe is it's not the Big Bang. It wasn't an explosion of matter into something else. This is space expanding. So the distance between two galaxies, for example, is getting greater. But that's not to say that those galaxies have velocities in opposing directions to each other. If you see what I mean, they're not moving apart and space is staying still. They're like if you got a pen and drew on a balloon and then blew the balloon up. The spots that you draw on the balloon aren't moving across the surface of the balloon, but when you blow it up they all get further apart from each other. And that's, run it backwards, and that's the Big Bang Theory. Obviously it's supported by probably more evidence than anything else, and is a very simple model of the universe because it's supported by the only test of a theory is experiment, and it's supported by a very well tested and very well used theory, which is general relativity, and doesn't rely on the idea that orbiting around a very boring planet, around a very boring star and a very boring galaxy live the most important people in the universe. So anyway, hope that is in some way interesting. If it's not, keep it to yourself. Okay, thanks very much.